We're here again at History in Action at Kirby Hall, just outside Corby.
Now in its 7th year, this is the world's largest historical reenactment festival. So join myself and Chuck
as we delve into yesteryear's battles.
The beautiful Elizabethan stately home, Kirby Hall, set in acres of rolling Northamptonshire countryside, once again played host to over 3,000 performers from the top historical display groups in Europe.
History in Action, staged by English Heritage, brought to life over 2,000 years of thrilling combat action, from Roman times to D-Day. The event also recreated scenes from landmark conflicts such as Hastings, the Napoleonic and American Civil Wars, and World War II.
In addition to the incredible military reenactments, History in Action also displayed the more commonplace aspects of history, with encampments showing true representations of various centuries. Many of these living history areas depicted life in stark reality, with the reenactors living, eating and working as our ancestors would have done.
Katie and I wandered the fields of Kirby Hall and came across many spectacular and sometimes unusual sights. In the late 1400s, the House of York fought the House of Lancaster for the English crown. Because Lancaster's heraldic badge was a red rose and York's was a white rose, the long conflict became known as the War of the Roses, from 1455 to 1485. I came across a family who were living as though they were part of this turbulent era. Right then, we're in the tent of an extended family from the era of the War of the Roses. Can you explain more about that particular period of history?
It's all to do with the Plantagenet house, or the House of Plantagenets, and it's splitting into two factions, the faction of York and the faction of Lancaster, but not counties. It's different surnames, and one, Lancaster was king, had the king, and then York took over the throne, usurped the crown, then Lancaster got it back, then York got it back again, then there was peace, then Edward IV died, then it all flared up again, and lots of people changed sides.
So it's a bit like the worst nightmare of your neighbours, really?
Yeah.
Battle of Neighbours.
Yeah.
And what kind of year are we looking at in this period of history?
It's 1455 to 1485. Wars of the Roses finished with the Battle of Bosworth.
Bosworth Fields, and then just after that, who was the King of England?
Henry VII.
Henry VII.
Henry Tudor.
Excellent. So, obviously, we're in your tent. This is some sort of... Would you carry this around as you went to battle?
Not in this country, no.
This is a...
It would be something that would be used on the continent. In England, you would have commandeered barns, or the common troops would sleep under trees in hedges.
So would you suggest you're quite a well-to-do, rich type of family?
Well, yes, I've got a bed.
Right. That's one of the major statements.
Oh, yeah, it's a big status symbol. It's like having a top-of-the-range BMW parked outside your garage.
In here over the weekend here at Kirby Hall, and it's comfortable and you've stayed warm, because obviously there was a bit of a downpour yesterday.
Yeah, we stayed warm. We managed to get most things dry from yesterday.
Your finery is very elegant indeed. Can you tell us about it and maybe where it comes from?
Like my husband just said, it is a high status dress. It's in the 15th century. If you had wealth, you would wear it. Whereas today we can put it in the bank. In the 15th century, we wear it. The dress is 8 metres of velvet, lined with a heavy brocade undergown and a linen shift underneath that. The sleeves are too long for me. The dress itself is 2 foot too long for me. Because I've obviously got that much money, I can afford to waste it on fabric I don't need. Again, it's a status thing. I can, because of my status, have some of my hair showing. The lower down in the classes you go, the less freedom you get with you.
Right.
With what you actually do show. My sister here is the same. She's quite a well-dressed lady.
Is that a dagger there?
It is. It's called a misery cord. And ladies carried these to put a knight out of his misery. If
Right.
she was to come across a knight on the field who was dying, mercy. And the actual sort of way they would have used it was to have gone through the eye slit of the helmet, into the eye and into the brain, or down through the armour, into the soft bit at the bottom of your throat, and try to find
The heart.
the heart. And there is misery.
From the 15th century, we moved into the 19th century, and Chuck bumped into an ally of the Duke of Wellington.
I have an interesting fact or two about the Duke of Wellington. Apart from appearing on the old £5 note, his real name was Arthur Wesley, and the sword he carried was in fact French, as it was made by the imperial goldsmith Vianney of Paris, but it's not known exactly how it came into Wellington's possession. A fine gun you're leaning against here, used in the Battle of Waterloo apparently.
This particular one was, yes.
Whereabouts? Which part of the world are we looking at?
We're looking at and this the Brunswick Foot Artillery actually fought near Hougoumont, which was one of the strong points in the Allied line.
And of course you're a sergeant
Right.
in that particular army,
In charge of the gun.
in charge of the gun, so you actually fire it up and wad it down? Or do you say the word
No,
fire?
I have people to do all that kind of thing for me. I make sure that it's loaded properly, pointing in the right direction, and fired when the commander tells me it should be fired.
Now obviously my history might not be too hot, but you were allies with
Wellington.
fighting against
French.
the French.
Yes.
And you're obviously wearing a very nice black uniform.
The French.
Yeah.
They were wearing all sorts of uniforms. Basically, they were blue to the British red or the Allied red. But the black was in honour of the Duke of Brunswick, who was killed by Napoleon. And all his troops went into mourning for the rest of the war. So it was actually black mourning uniform.
That's a fantastic piece of history and a wonderful piece of information.
Trivia.
Are you firing this gun this afternoon here
We
at
will
Kirby
be
Hall?
firing it this afternoon, yes.
And it works?
It works very well.
Does it take out buildings?
Hopefully not. Nor any of the opposing side. They tend not to like it.
Okay. Well, have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
War. Millions of lives lost, both civilian and military. The reverberations of this war would be felt throughout the 20th century and beyond. Stalingrad was one of the cities in Russia that was encircled by German troops. The Russian army held out long enough before the Russian winter took its toll on the German surrounding forces. At this point, the defenders became the attackers and ultimately pushed the German army back to Berlin.
During the siege, thousands of trenches were constructed around the city to prevent the German army's occupation. 3/4 of the German war effort was directed against the Soviet Union, even after the D-Day landings in France in 1944. It could therefore be true to say that not only did they fight the war on two fronts, the outcome of the Second World War was partially decided on the Eastern Front. Now we have been at the other end of the field where the Germans are, but at the moment I'm in a trench just outside Stalingrad with a private who's probably manning this gun by.
Well, it's been very wet, actually, at the moment. It probably resembles some of the lives that they have. We've certainly been experiencing, because we've been we've been actually living in these trenches for 4 days now, haven't we? The whole time. And it's been really torrential rain, so it's been quite difficult conditions. But they're quite comfortable, actually, not as bad as you'd think.
We're actually in a field, and you've been living like this for 4 days.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to going home and having a shower tomorrow?
Actually, I'd like to stay here another week, actually. I mean it. We've got dug in, we've just settled in now. Be quite happy to stay here for another week. I'd like to see my girlfriend though. I have, but I was actually 15th century. In fact, both of us have been 15th century before. In fact, I'm in the brochure, I think. I used to do, knights on horseback and all the rest of it. But, we move on and change, and so now I'm doing World War II Soviet Army. So
there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Variety is the spice of life.
Oh, certainly. Well, that's no plain sailing, but join us.
After the break, from more from History in Action from Kirby Hall near Corby. Welcome back to part 2 of History History in Action 2002 from Kirby Hall near Corby.
We're currently at the Russian end of the trenches, but let's go and see some nice German folk. Good German then.
Not entirely.
So why do you want to dress up and be a German for the weekend?
Well, the uniforms are a damn sight smarter, you've got to admit it. The peak cap is fantastic, and also we've got to give the British something to shoot at.
Right, so you're reenacting which kind of particular historical episode?
Well, we are German military police officers. We wear the Feldgendarmerie badge, and we're sort of tasked with keeping the troops in order, keeping the POWs moving, and running the field brothel. Someone's got to do it. It's a dirty job.
I'm sure it is. Now we've just seen a bit of a skirmish out there on the field.
Yeah, that's a battle between units of German infantry units and the Red Army, the Russian troops at the back there, which for once has been successful for the German forces. I'm sure it'll never happen again.
No, sure not. Was it 5-1?
5-1. It was very close. There was a last-minute move over by an NKVD unit, which I think almost equalised, but it was running close there.
Ah, I see. So, have you been here all weekend at Kirby Hall?
Yeah, we've been here all weekend. The weather yesterday was absolutely shocking. We enjoyed Somme-like conditions, but we've dug in nicely and we're ready for the weather no matter what it throws at us.
I'm going to try and use a bit of history and what I picked up in O-level German, or it's actually O-level history. Do you have one of those pistols, a Luger?
Nope, but I'm carrying a P38.
P38.
Much more common, a lot more reliable.
Was it made in Birmingham, maybe?
This one? Not entirely.
Not like the British Army today. And your wonderful long-handled hand grenades. Do you have one of those to hand? Look at this. Straight into shot.
My colleague's got one there. Stick grenade. They're very long because of the ease of throwing them. You get them to go a lot further than the British Mills grenades. And the heads were quite heavy when they were packed with explosives. Of course, this is deactivated. We don't use anything live around here. It'll be dangerous.
Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. As you can see behind me, the Roman Imperial Army that would have been rolling around the green fields of England 43 AD, 2,000 years ago or so, in front of the lovely Kirby Hall, reenacting one of their battle strategies. You can see catapults and bows.
Resting on their control of massive armed forces, paid for out of the Emperor's privy purse, and to him by an oath of personal allegiance. The vast majority of soldiers were stationed in so-called imperial provinces, commanded by direct appointees of the Emperor. Therefore, the Roman army,
called legions, formed the core of the Roman army. During the first of the 3 centuries of the Empire, the army contained no more than 25 to 34 legions. Each of these units consisted of about 5,000 to 6,000 men, recruited among the citizen body. The soldiers were tough, well-trained, superbly equipped, and disciplined. Collectively, they constituted the most formidable fighting machine that the ancient world has ever seen.
the army that invaded Britain in 43 AD was at the command of the Emperor Claudius. The Roman army in Britain acted as a police force, combating minor civil disorders or quelling cattle raids, provided skilled administrators and engineers to the principal governors.
All around history in action, reenactors went about their daily tasks, living in their respective periods of time. Visitors frequently mingled with these people of history, examining their living quarters and marvelling at just how they managed to live in those conditions for a whole weekend. But the reenactors clearly love it and are highly devoted to their pastime. But I have to say, these next two gentlemen certainly took their reenacting to the extreme. I'm here at Kirby Hall and joined by a couple of Native Americans. They were fighting. You were fighting in the 7 Years' War between the Indians and the French.
No, the French and the Indians against the Indians on both. There was Indians on both sides, but most of them were fighting for the French.
And so, obviously, you're both wearing war paint. What does it actually mean? Is there any meaning between what we're actually wearing?
The main, you can put it down to three main reasons for wearing war paint. One, it disguises your age, you show in your eyes. And thirdly, and mainly, is to terrify your opponent, of which it was very successful.
It's certainly happening now. I'm quite concerned. But up to date, we're at Kirby Hall. How have you found this weekend? Have you had a good time? Has it been fun?
Oh, yeah. Good weekend, yeah. For the first time, they've camped us in the woods, where we are always happier.
And
camped in the middle of this field, we just don't feel good.
So you're in the woods. How far is that from the beer tanks? I'm sure that's got some sort of bearing on it.
Not too far.
But it has been a good weekend. Obviously, the weather stayed off today.
The weather stayed off today. Yeah, it's been excellent. It's been a very good Kirby. We always do our best for Kirby to try and show ourselves in our best light for the public, answer any questions that are asked. Obviously,
throughout the county and throughout the country, there's lots of these reenactments go on. Do you take part in many of them yearly?
For New France, Old England, roughly about between 4 and half a dozen a year that we do. Our main ones are here, Kirby. We did Hounslow a little while back in Middlesex. The American Museum at Bath is something we do every year.
Now, I would imagine, obviously, to actually come up in all these wonderful costumes and uniforms and such that we've seen here over the weekend, that you have to know your history about why you're here, really.
Yeah, well, basically, we get all our information from primary evidence. We don't, watching films, watching Last of the Mohicans, and that's Hollywood. We go for the accuracy of what it really was like, how they looked. As I say, Jesuit priests, funny enough, are a very good source of information. They were always writing back to the papacy to tell them exactly how things were over there and how they were getting on with their converts. But in doing that, they also like to report back to the Vatican exactly the social and customs of the people.
I know what you're going to say next. Typical Katie can't keep away from the men in uniform. But in all fairness, the whole of Kirby Hall was filled with men in attire relevant to a specific period of time. So I had no choice but to pick one to interrogate. Well, I know I like my cars, but I think this is a little bit extreme. David, tell me a little bit about what we're sitting on at the moment.
We're currently sitting in a British Daimler Dingo scout car. This particular one was built in 1942. Saw action in North Africa, Italy and France. This particular vehicle has been restored as a captured German vehicle. The Germans did capture these vehicles in quite large numbers. By the end of the war, they had about 250. The vehicles were mainly used for rear line duties, so they were used for policing, anti-partisan role, working against resistance. They were also used for headquarters liaison. Later in the war, when the things started to go really badly wrong for the Germans, they were desperately short of manpower. The police units were pressed into frontline action, so it may well have been used for reconnaissance as well.
What's its top speed?
It's got a top speed of 45 miles an hour. It can do 55 for short bursts, but I wouldn't actually do it because it's a 60-year-old engine, so just out of respect, I don't drive at that speed.
Is it a difficult vehicle to drive though? Because I mean, it looks quite basic inside, but it's
not particularly difficult. I mean, the gearbox is a pre-selected gearbox, which is the same as they had on buses in the 50s and 60s. The only thing you've got to remember when you drive this vehicle is that you are actually sitting over the front wheel, so when you turn the steering wheel, the vehicle turns much more violently than your car at home would.
Really?
So when you first start driving it, you're convinced the vehicle's going to roll on every corner, so you do tend to take it a little bit slow.
So how did you actually manage to get hold of it in the first place?
Well, I belong to a military vehicle club, the condition I was looking for and the sort of price range I was looking for, so I went along and had a look at it and drove it home.
What's the appeal of events like this?
I think it's, I know, apart from obviously the sort of camaraderie within the group and the ability to just come out and have a good time with friends, there's also the education side from our point of view to the public, about educating the public about exactly what the German soldiers really were like, apart from what the media represents them as. And to try and prove that they weren't all ardent Nazis, and the key point is that not all Germans were Nazis and not all Nazis were Germans.
We don't do it to glorify the Third Reich or anything like that. It's solely for the country, exactly the same as the British, American and Russians did.
So what do you think to the amount of people that are here so far, particularly on the last day? Are you impressed?
I'm fairly impressed, yeah. It was quite quiet last year compared to other years, but I think it's picking up now. Obviously, hopefully the weather will hold off, and we might even get our vehicles out of here alive, you know. Good afternoon.
Well, Katie, I've learned some very interesting facts and seen some wonderful reenactments.
Good. But next week, join me here at Kirby Hall near Corby for more History in Action.